everyone else can join along the way. Thanks for finding time to join our last webinar of 2025. It's been a privilege having the Career Site community join this webinar. For those joining for the first time, the Career Site community is a community made up of professionals across all ages, professions, business, who are passionate about mentoring. So there are mentors, mentees amongst us who are really keen to see how they can support others to grow their careers, to grow their businesses, and really to just bring out their purpose. So today's webinar is with Kwame Owino, and I'll ask him to turn on his camera. And the topic for today will be having a discussion from ideas to influence, how bold thinkers build careers that change the world. And I'm sure as we discuss with Kwame, we'll understand what that's about. As we have the discussion, please feel free as you listen to drop questions on the chat. We are also lining up speakers for next year. So if you have any ideas of someone you'd like to speak, if you're on the call and would also like to speak, we welcome you to drop your name and we'll pick those and for next year line up speakers. We also have our end of year dinner. So if you're interested to attend or speak also, let us know. But yeah, we'll kick off. Allow me to just say something about Kwame before I hand over to him. Kwame Owino is one of Kenya's most respected public thinkers. He's a leader who has shown that ideas, when pursued with courage and integrity, can shape nations. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Economic Affairs, which is a leading public policy research think tank. Under his leadership, the Institute of Economic Affairs has become a trusted voice in democratic governance, economic policy, and public accountability, consistently grounding national debates in facts, evidence, and clear thinking. Beyond that, Kwame is a passionate mentor and a champion of young professionals, wanting to work with them to find their voice. He believes that influence begins long before the spotlight, in quiet moments when you choose to think deeper, question boldly, and stand by your values. So today we are really honored to have you, Kwame. Good evening.
Good evening, and thanks for the kind introduction.
No, that I think that is a really accurate description of who you are, and we really look forward to learning from you and hearing more. I know you've spoken at one of our dinners, and it was really exciting. So thank you for joining the webinar so that we can get other people engaged on this conversation. So maybe as we kick off, tell us about yourself, your background, where did you grow up, what did you do? Basically, who are you beyond the titles, and what shaped your early curiosity and direction?
All right. Okay, so first, thanks for the kind introduction, and everybody, I apologize that I didn't get the right equipment, so my camera is a bit hazy, but I've been forgiven for that. So let's hope the conversation compensates for that. Okay, so I'm Kwame Owino. So I was born in the just right at the end of the first decade after independence. So you know when that was in Nairobi. I have a twin brother. I don't know if it's necessary to say this, but my father is was a lawyer, and my mother was a teacher, a school teacher. And I have 4 siblings. So my brother and 3 other sisters. So all of us born in Nairobi, but after some time, our family moved to the small town of Kisumu. Our parents needed to be closer to our grandmother, who my parents were taking care of. So I went to school, some primary school, part of my primary school, and a little bit of high school in Nairobi, and then our family moved down to Kisumu after some time. So I went to Kisumu Boys High School, that's right up there, towards the end of the 3rd term, and then obviously I finished my high school there. And after that, I was admitted to Digital University to study for a BSc in physics, geography, and math. And then I wanted something more serious. So I left I left the science faculty and came to study economics, history, and geography, believe it or not, and sociology. Mm-hmm. So that's it basically. So I graduated from Digital University with a Bachelor of Arts degree in arts, basically. And my major was sociology, economics being a minor degree there. And then soon after I left Egerton University, so now we are talking towards the tail end of 2000, towards 2000, I started to study law. And I studied law for a year, and then I left it or quit. And part of that was obviously because I got a job. So I got a job to go to Uganda with the World Food Program. I just applied online in those days when, and for one reason or another, they admitted me. So basically I was a statistician. So they were conducting what they were calling a survey, basically a baseline survey for the World Food Program, which was providing, remember, towards the end of 2000, towards 99 and 2000, Uganda was just restabilizing after the North, which had had a small civil war or an internal. So basically that, and then in the middle of Uganda were refugees who come from the Congo and Rwanda who had been. So basically they needed somebody to carry out a survey, a baseline survey, and somebody else was given the job and I applied, and so that they allowed me to a statistician to design the instruments. So I worked there for 8 months, working outside Kenya for 8 months, and then came back to Kenya. And again, just the belief that if you have knowledge, you can cover up whatever capacity gap you have by reading on what is required. If you understand a task, you can go back and do it. Then much later, so I finished that job. And when I finished that job, which is about 2001, the IEA advertised for a position of a research assistant. So I joined the IEA early 2002. Late 2002. And I became a research officer there, worked for 1 year. And then obviously at the end of it, became a program officer. So I'm one of the longest serving, well, I'm actually the longest serving program officer that the IE has ever had, because I worked in that position for about 12 years. And then in the year 2000, and in between, of course, I had a break. I went for a fellowship somewhere. I finished a couple of more courses. And then in the year 2015, I was appointed as in an acting capacity for a year as a chief executive officer of the IEA. And then in 2016, I was confirmed as chief executive officer at the Institute of Economic Affairs. So that's it for basically my life, my education, and part of my early career. Of course.
Okay. No, that's interesting. Was the law stint because you wanted to study law like your twin brother, I wonder?
It could have been part of that twin envy. But remember, our dad was a lawyer as well, and we were very impressed with him and that. So that possibly could have been part of it. But part of the reason I studied law, to be honest, was in Egerton University, our education was very hands-on, in my view. And that's when I hear people say that 844 is a bad system of education. I ask them, please help us to understand what about it was actually could be improved. And a lot of things could be improved, but it was hands-on. And I liked policy. The reason I liked policy, I can put in here. When I was a student in Egerton University, remember this was right in the thick of the AIDS epidemic. So we are talking about the mid-90s. I had an opportunity to travel in one part of this country. And for the first time in my life, I met a woman who was about my grandmother's age. So here we are talking about somebody who at that point could have been about 60 or close to 60 and had never put on shoes throughout her life. And she told me that. A Kenyan.
Wow.
1997. And that shocked me. And I said, look, we are studying economics, we are studying sociology. Can't understand why somebody should be born in a republic such as Kenya. And here about 35 years after our independence. And this woman never put on shoes throughout her life. I think we need to be serious with this. Are the things we are studying important for the society in which? Yes. Yeah. So that got me back. So I had an interest in policy. And I think law is an important policy because law is command. And if you don't what the law requires you to do, government will have something to say. So I had a view that law is policy, and legal formation, therefore, is very essential how society is led. So that might have been part of it. So justifying and all that. Yes.
That's great. As we go in, you'll tell us more about how you're a long-serving employee. I keep saying I've never received long service awards, and I think the Gen Zs on the call probably have shorter stints than me. Mine are like 7 or 9 years. But that's great. But what do you wish you knew at the beginning of your career? if you step back for the younger people on the call, what do you wish you knew at the beginning of your career?
Okay, that's a difficult question. Many things, to be honest. One of the things that I sitting back here, I wish I knew. Perhaps when you have an undergraduate degree,
yes,
many are in a hurry to jump into something new.
There's a point where you're losing your voice. I think, yeah, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, it breaks at some point here, but go ahead.
One of the things I wished I knew is that basically patience is a virtue, especially after you graduated and you have high grades. You almost always think that these grades entitle you to make choices that don't require you to reflect a little bit more. And so I didn't go immediately into a postgraduate degree, but I started to study law almost immediately. And I realized that after time that I was rushing to make a choice to pack credentials, which was more suitable at that time. So that's one of the first ones that I did. So that's one. The second thing that I also wish I knew before I started work was we specialize in Kenya far too early. And so we are masters very early of very thin areas of specialization. And while that's bad, in the policy arena, I actually think that knowing a little bit of things, law here, all that, is something very, very helpful. And that I tend to tell colleagues at the IEA that, look, anybody given a specialization could probably do well, but the most important thing is to be able to mix viewpoints. That would be extremely useful. That's one other thing that I wish I'd known. I was more certain of about that early. So that's one.
Oh, okay, that's good. And your work, I know you've spoken about when you went to university and met someone who didn't have shoes. But when you started working or in your journey, when do you feel that your work aligned fully with your purpose? When did you feel like what I'm doing is purpose and not just a job like any other?
Wow. I don't know, to be honest, that there's a clear separation. Because one of the things at the Institute of Economic Affairs, so I've worked at the Institute of Economic Affairs at the end of this year, it would be 22 years. Wow. And that's a long time. But we don't have, we have regular cycles of planning at the Institute of Economic Affairs like we have everybody else. But I can tell you no 4 or 5 year chunk in which I can say I exhausted all I could do and that I did the same thing. So that ability to reinvent oneself, to reinvent the task is one of the things that I think this my career has advised me. Otherwise, you get very bored. So you don't do the same. I mean, of course, if you're doing management, that tends to happen. You're doing the more or less certain things that are clearer every year. But at the IEA, we almost always reinvent ourselves, and that's a required thing. So I don't think that it's one moment, but a series of times just tells you. And one of those things that continue to tell me is, look, when I came from, rather, when one of the things that you hear is, we learn every day what Kenyans know about the economy and the reality of our lives in Kenya is very different. So 3 years ago, I had known that Kenya has made a lot of progress. But 3 years ago, I actually learned for the first time that 21% of Kenyan children below the age of 5 are stunted. Stunted. 21%. So that's 1 in 5 of Kenyans 60 years after independence have had stunted. In other words, it's basically inadequate nutrition, but for some of it, of course, diseases that affect the ability to appropriate. For me, that shocked me, to be honest. That shocked me because that shouldn't happen at Kenya's income level, but with the knowledge that. So those things still tell us that, okay, even as we work in policy and try to advise government and educate Kenyans, we still have lots of work to do because that's a very big.
Yeah, that's a big number. That's a big number. But yeah, I think we have to keep moving. And I like what you said about IEA and organizations that are entrepreneurial. I feel like even at CAM, you're always inventing, you're always building. And there are many organizations like that where every other day is not the same. Even the work I've been doing at TBI, also the same, you have room to invent. So I feel like organizations that give you that room make it very different. And in terms of your ideas, and as you're saying, there's a lot that needs to change. But when do you feel like you started to trust that your ideas needed to be heard and that by taking them out there, you're actually playing your part in making a difference in society?
Okay. One of the things that when we work at the IE, and I was hired at the IE by somebody, I mean, she was your
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things that we always ask ourselves at the IEA is that we need to build credibility and trust.
Yeah.
But the ways that we act, one of the things that we do is actually to, or rather the ways that remind us that we are not idle, is when you have government, sometimes a letter coming from the hands of the cabinet secretary for finance or any other one, asking you for views or an opportunity to meet. That tells you a lot. One of them is that, okay, people actually know that you're not saying or doing research or advocating positions just because you like to see yourself on TV, for instance. You're actually advocating because somebody in government who tends to be, all factors considered, very cautious, and they're very they've examined the record and actually see that on the balance, you actually, and I'm talking about the organization, the Institute of Economic Affairs, has something to contribute to. That's very say that's encouraging, because it shows that your credibility and the way you think about yourself is something that other people who have huge responsibilities to make the lives of Kenyans better actually see that there's value in some of the stuff that you say. So I think that's one indicator that usually is a helpful one. Yeah.
That's great. And of course, as you speak up, sometimes you face doubt or pushback or people critiquing, and in many cases, maybe even policy leaders. How have you handled that?
Okay. So we know one of the things that we do that. So for instance, the IEA expects us not just to be able to do good research, but we should be able to communicate it, because we have to persuade people. You all know that if you carry out research, the reason the IEA is different from a university is our research is not an end in itself. We need to use it to persuade other people. And that therefore requires especially policymakers that you do. But let me tell you the paradox, Phyllis. We actually, at the Institute of Economic Affairs, receive more pushback not from the political constituencies, actually from other Kenyans who have different ideology or views. So I'm usually not, and I'm using the word scared advisedly, I'm usually not scared walking into a room with, say, a PS or members of parliament, because those people, regardless of what we think about them, somehow they understand that, one, there are differences in policy views, but also they actually think that you take what you tell them seriously because you're going on the record. The person I usually find sometimes laughable is a person on the street who will say something like, you guys are saying the things the World Bank told you to say. Do you guys get that? So really, and what that tells us is why the IEA exists, that our work is actually to persuade other Kenyans, much, much more than to think that we need the attention of government. So that basically we need to be able to do both. So pushback comes, even from government. Sometimes they tell you, like, look, I will give you, let me give you an anecdote. When I joined the Institute of Economic Affairs, I worked in a competition policy, economic regulation, and that is competition policy. And I remember at that time, one of the institutions we wanted to be able to influence the most was it used to be called the Communications Commission of Kenya, CCK, so the predecessor of the today's CAK. And we were meeting them at a meeting that they called. And at that time, the IEA was of this view that licenses needed to be liberalized, and there was no reason for Safaricom to maintain the license monopoly that it had. And somebody told us to our faces that, look, we had a firm from London tell us that Kenya has only a capacity for 1.4 million licenses. I mean, 1.4 million mobile phone subscribers. At that time, I think Safaricom was at about 600, 700,000 or something like that. some number. I can't remember exactly, but it was a number that was closer to that. And he says, so if we liberalize, what are we doing it for? So here you're seeing people in the public sector who are telling you that you have one view, but we also have consultants coming from London who have a different view. And we have decided, because we paid them 40 million, that we should believe them and not you. So we understood very early at the IEA that we work on a contested ground, and persuading people is an important part of the work we have to do. And we need to be able to sharpen our communication, and we need to be able to so we are an outward-facing think tank. Government doesn't have to come to us. We have to go for government, but at the same time, there are people who are well-meaning who do not necessarily take a view one way or the other unless we persuade them. So that's one example that was always stayed in my mind.
No, thanks for that. I think when we speak about like issue-based conversations, even around election cycles and things like that, I agree with you that the larger population is actually the one that needs to be persuaded and listen to these ideas. So in full agreement with you. Coming back to careers, what's the biggest career risk you've taken, and how did that play out?
Okay, so let me tell you. Yes, the biggest career risk I took was actually to jump to take the job of the CEO of the IEA. I mean, I'd worked at the IEA in-house for 11 years. The job was advertised. And then when the job was advertised, I chose to apply for it. No, actually, I wasn't going to apply for it, to be honest, because this is the way I interpreted it. I interpreted the job of a chief executive as a lot of risks. One, you're responsible for the first thing on the chief executive of the IEA's KPIs is the fiscal solvency of the IEA. And then the second is thought leadership. I thought thought leadership is okay. I mean, but fiscal solvency, making sure that an organization at that time spending about 180 million shillings per year, which we have to raise, and often we have nothing to sell. Basically, it's intangible. You're selling ideas was a bit risky because it's not something I've done before. So I think that was it. But on the whole, the chief executive was leaving, and a couple of other people who worked at the IEA said, look, give it a shot. So actually, it wasn't a life and death issue for me. So I was far more relaxed about it than the others. And so when the board interviewed me, the committee of the board interviewed me, one of the things they told me is that we see this as a gap. And I told them that that's very, very true. But I've always been able to, quote unquote, rise to the occasion. So if you give me that challenge, it is possible that I might do it. Maybe not perfectly in a year or so, but this. And so what I told them is, why don't you then appoint me in an acting capacity for a year? I mean, I suggested that as part of bridging that conversation. And that's how it went. So I'm not too sure that that's what persuaded them. But at the same time, I was clearer about what my own limitations were, which is different. And they told me at the end, many of the people who came about it some had PhDs. I don't have a PhD yet. Many of them had spoke as if, the modern corporate world and modern training makes people who are either applying for jobs or speaking to speak as if you have no doubt at all. You have no doubts about things, and that you don't have any challenges that you need to cover. And that's usually a trap, because I think what it does then, it tells you that people are talking themselves up, and they perhaps don't appreciate the fact that challenges are part of how you grow. If you're already too fit for the job, then you're not going to be able to raise the roof or to elevate the standards. So I think that was one of the biggest, because it's comparatively easier to just be a researcher, carry out conversations with people, meet people out there, collect data, and speak about it. But when you're now the voice of the organization, you're the one taking the risks, you're the contact with the board, which is also our board is very high power, intellectual power. So these are not people you're able to squeeze things around by talking fast and, speaking the corporate language. They've seen it all, and they are usually able to cut the chase and see. But so that was the risk for me. I mean, for the first time, I knew that I might come short from that assignment.
No, I think that self-awareness and being honest about limitations is important, because as you've said, sometimes we want to play it up and look like everything is fine, but it does send a positive signal when someone is very, very self-aware. So what habits do you think have really shaped this journey? Because you've been a CEO now maybe for 10 years. What has your leadership journey been like, and what has really made you a good CEO? I can confirm, and you know why.
Okay. I think one of the things that I think, well, it's both it's both I mean, it has a it's one thing that's also a trade-off. I think one of the things I think my colleagues know, and my governors, who are the board who supervise me, know, is I speak my mind, and that's useful. Because if I'm in error, it will not be hidden. I will speak my mind, and somebody will say, no, but there's a gap in your reasoning here and there. And that's useful. Even my colleagues know that I speak my mind. And I try often much not to say that if something is not to the standard, I don't say, guys, can we repeat it using a different board? Simply say that, look, this doesn't look like, if it can't persuade me as an insider, you're unlikely to persuade people out there. And that's not, what do I attribute that to? I think in that I'm a little different from many Kenyans. And I'm not saying that I'm better, I'm saying I'm different. Because Kenyans value consensus, and many Kenyans, you can call it education system, but I think our upbringing tends to just show that if you disagree too much, or if you speak your ideas too much, there's something about you that's too loud and too insecure. So that's in that I'm completely different. I mean, I come from a home in which my parents and my siblings accepted that debate is not. So to tell somebody I disagree with you is not to say they are stupid. You're simply saying you're not persuading me that you actually know it. So you need to complete the circle. I think that's an important leadership thing. Now, I know some leadership models require people to be quiet. My view is that if you bring in your real personality, it's possible to grow in your. So I think that's one. Two, one thing that I think I also do well is I'm able to appropriate knowledge and facts from different people. So I'm not saying I'm a good listener. I can be a better listener, but I usually know where to find facts or to find opinions to be able to put that together. And that's useful because our work, my view is, my thing is, our work as a CEO, at least on the thinking side, is you're a fact finder. You find facts and then you use those facts to reach a decision. And the third one is basically, I'm not too rigid in the sense that I'm somebody who always wants certainty. In a management job, some of the decisions you take will be on the basis of good judgment based on the information that exists. So you don't insist that unless all the information is available, we can't act here or not. You can record the reason you acted the way you do. And as new facts come in, you refine the old idea and get it better and better. So I think perhaps those three things. And of course, I think I'm a good reader. And and a final one that I struggle with every day is, let me tell you guys, so this again, I'm going back to my upbringing, and I'm sorry for those who don't like this. If you're a twin, I have a twin brother. Mm. And you grow up in a family in which you have a twin brother who's, through most of your childhood, the smartest person you know. That's going to make you somebody who actually refines your thinking, because you just get challenged. And I have to, I say this, his classmates and everybody say, I'm a smart man, but I can tell you, if you ask me in Kenya to rank the 5 smartest men I do, my brother will fall in that. And I'm not piping for him on PR. People who work with him know. Wow. As well. The good thing about that is that kind of intelligence rubs on you, by the way. The company you keep sometimes is visible in the things that you do. So one of the things that it's done, I am used to debate and to speak. And speaking well and communicating well, I think, is a virtue that's important for a leader or anybody else, even if you're a follower, because all of us lead in one thing and we follow in others. So I guess that's the personal side.
No, thanks for that. Yeah, speaking your mind, that's important. We are ready for Q&A in the next 5 minutes, so please drop your questions. I'm looking at the chat. That's why I've not moved there. I haven't seen questions, so I'll keep going until I see a critical mass. But hopefully, in the next 5 minutes, drop your questions. What would you tell young professionals about how they can start building influence even before they have a title? How can they start influencing ideas, discussions, and making a difference? And I think for this younger generation, maybe they do it easier, but what's your advice?
Well, my advice again, yes, and you can fix this by saying, what is somebody 20 years younger than me should do, or what would you do if you're one generation below me? But I think one of the ideas of building influence is to be consistent, to be always there. Part of the way you build confidence is just to show that it's not a flash in the pan. I believe the IEA requires us, but we believe that markets are a good way of organizing economic activity. We have facts for it. And every opportunity that I have, I remind myself and I remind that people that, by the way, this is true and this is the evidence for it. So as we all know, understand that repetition is a good thing, but you always have to show up. You have to stick your neck out and people have to understand. Because some of it is risky, especially if you're young, but people need to know what you believe and why you believe it. So one of those things is consistency. That's a useful thing for actually your credibility. So the second one is own your errors. I remember one of the things that I used to write a blog post for the Daily Nation. I think I wrote about 250 different articles because I wrote for them for about 4 years and I was writing almost every week or the week after. And one of the things that I discovered was, if you're in an environment in which people who read you, so one of the things that happened was once I quoted an article, which was, I said 52 when the number was 25. and my colleagues who read it actually alerted me. And I wrote back to whoever was my editorial guy. And I told him that, look, last week you need to fix this thing and everything else. And he says, by the way, some people had also noticed it from the audience. So if you respect the people and the audience that you speak to, that you actually are able to own up errors of that kind, is usually, it establishes your credibility. You don't get defensive when those errors are. So I think that's one of the things that people do. And the third one is just basically we all need a wide base of knowledge. One of the things I ask young people sometimes when we interview them as interns at the Institute of Economic Affairs, I take the internship program very, very seriously, such that we have colleagues who manage it, but when interns are interviewed, I sit in. And one of the questions I usually ask them, so it's he or she, is tell me an idea that you think I wouldn't know. Tell me something that is not trivial, but that I wouldn't know. In other words, you're forcing people to not be, to go above the mundane. And then you hear very interesting things, I mean, from all manner of things and all that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be politics or, economics or governance, but somebody will just tell you something about it. And it's really, really interesting. So I'll tell you one, so I can end here. Again, not related to the IEA, but not directly, but this person tells me that I have a sister who's a nurse. And do you know the difference between first degree burns and third degree burns? And I didn't, because my biology ended in high school. And she tells me, third degree burns and fourth degree burns, while they're the most serious for doctors to deal with, they're not painful. And that surprised me. Why? Because they are so severe that the nerves have been burnt. So the patient doesn't even know that there's pain there. But they'll be very difficult to resolve because of the scarring. First degree burns, however, have burnt the surface, but the nerves are there. So if you are burned and you're feeling pain, then you know that it wasn't as serious as the other was. And that just blew me away. Because first it shows broad base of knowledge. And this is a person who's taken an opportunity to just sit with her sister who's a nurse, or maybe might have been an intern medic, but learn something that you don't get off the streets every day. And that's impressive, because to be a curious mind is extremely useful for your own influence and your ability to be. And that I always repeat to people. And imagine, I learned it from a student who wanted to be an intern at the IEA. So other people can certainly do better.
No, I like that you listen even to the interns and everyone has something valuable to add. As I'm drawing to the end of the questions, what skill has given you the greatest edge in your journey?
Okay, well, I think it's a general skill for anybody who's working at a professional. My view about a professional is two things. I just go to the ABCs, to whatever's, right? When you go to school, and my mother was a school teacher, so she always reminded us that regardless of what you call it, because we had this split in our family in which all my sisters went to the 763 system. And then my brother and I had the misfortune of being 844 boys. So there was always this debate about which is the better. And my mother, who's a teacher, said, it doesn't matter, it's what you learn. And so you learn numeracy, the ability to read, the ability to speak, and the ability to read numbers. That ability to do all those three is important. And if you can write, especially if you can write, you just become deadly. I mean, the ability to express ideas in written form, regardless of what new forms of media tell us, is still a superior skill. So that's one that I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I try so often, but one of the things that we have as the IEA is, because we are writers, we are not faithful always, but we say that you write at least 500 words per day. And then the next day you refine it and you add another 500 words. It's just one way of practicing a muscle. And if you practice that muscle, you become much better at it.
Yeah, I agree about writing. Lastly, what kind of leaders and thinkers do you think Kenya and Africa needs? What should we do to prepare? And what is that one big idea you think can change our country?
Well, so for leaders, so for leaders first, I think we need leaders. So let's talk about leaders in the private sector. Leaders in the private sector usually get signals. If you're a leader in the private sector and you're developing bad service or you're developing bad goods and services, the market will give you back a response very quickly. So leaders in the private sector, I don't say they're perfect, but learn from market signals, and that's very, very sobering, because you can't keep saying we have a superior product and no one's buying it. I mean, no board would accept that, and you'll go bankrupt very quickly. Leaders in the political sides tend to be very, very closed. And part of that is because their errors, they can hide it. So we have, for instance, today we are paying, I like to say this is only political comment to make. We are all paying for the housing levy fund, for houses we will never get and will never live on, but it doesn't matter. By the time we all realize it was a monumental error, whoever came up with it will have retired and has his fine pension. Do you see that? So that they have a security in the sense that they can keep a bad idea going for long. So what do I think that leaders should do? I actually think that political leaders, especially on this continent, should have more faith in people being able to solve their own problems. And so we don't have government patronizing and being everything. Very soon government will be telling us what size of plates we should be serving dinner in. I think government in Africa is too intrusive. It's failing to do the most basic parts: keep people safe, keep water and stuff like that clean, and then leave us to decide when we go to a restaurant, how much sugar should we put in our tea and stuff like that, and what should people feed to their kids at home. So the point is actually to ensure that to have a smaller vision of things government can do, but do them extremely well. That's maybe. In other words, you're having more faith in your citizens to solve problems by giving them space.
Thank you so much. I'm moving to the questions. Thanks for dropping questions. Rosie, you'll help to unmute. If you're able to speak on the mic, please go ahead. If not, I'll read out your question. So I'll move to Samson Dory, who had the first question. Okay. Samson, are you able to come? Rosie, confirm if you can unmute Samson.
Yes, he needs to unmute himself now.
Oh, okay. Samson, please go ahead.
Hello, Phyllis. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for this session. It's been really insightful, and I think it's a very nice platform to have Mr. Owino, given that we've seen him in other platforms, and I think this would be very ideal. I hope it's not only the only platform, but will be probably a first of many. So my question to Mr. Kwame would be, what impulse drove him to do what he currently does? And is it still the same impulse that keeps him at what he does every day?
Thank you. Over to you, Kwame.
Okay. So one of the things that, when I studied in Egerton University and then subsequently some university in the UK, but let's insist on what I learned from it. Okay. When we were studying economics, development, sociology, one professor once told me something that I found very interesting. And he said, all the knowledge that is required to lift people out of poverty is already available. most of the basic knowledge that is required to lift people out of poverty is available. So basically your work, as you're sending us out, is to ensure that this knowledge is made available to the people who can do something about it. So the problem is not the knowledge. The problem is how we channel that knowledge and use it to inform behavior. So that's one. The second was, you do very complex and complicated stuff. You do very complex and complicated stuff. But one of the things that we did, or rather the courses that I liked the most in Egerton University were policy-oriented courses, which are problem solving. I mean, I was good at statistics. I got statistics in those and all that. But whenever we were asked to solve a problem, which is a policy problem, which tends to be very, very complex about certain things, I found the idea of the possibility of being creative one that's useful. So I always wanted to work in policy. And as I told you, that's part of the reason when I graduated, I first went and started to study law before I quit after the first year. So that's it. So my view is human development is a problem to be solved. And then we ask ourselves what kind of knowledge is necessary for us to make it better. I'll give you guys another anecdote since Phyllis, I hope that's okay, asked us.
Yeah, it's fine.
When we were kids, our father was a lawyer and our mother was a teacher. On our birthday, I tell you this, my father died when I was 9, before he turned 10. But I'm not kidding, and I'm not trying to get any point. When we were kids, our father would weigh us on our birthday. And then he would take maize, rice, and sometimes sugar, equivalent to our joint weights. And we'd either donate it to a children's home or we'd take it to shags and we'd give it to, relatives in those parts of the world. So that's our sensitizing us to the fact that we were a little more privileged than other people. That's the first. But what it brought me back to economics was to ask ourselves, it led me to ask myself, what exactly is poverty? Not inequality, poverty. I'm asking myself, why is it that my father is able to do this? It wasn't us buying, but he would weigh us. We had a scale at home and then he'd do that and then whatever. But he had this office somewhere in town here where I don't know if all of you remember, I betray my age. So in those days, you had these weighing machines that it was by Kenya Avery something, a company in Kenya that used to make weighing.
Machine.
Yes. So they used to put them on top of outside the 20th century and movies areas. So whenever we came from a movie, our father would have to put in a shilling sometimes or more, and then you weigh yourself and then you record your weight, right? So stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that I'm justifying it as an adult. It wasn't for me those days, but I'm asking myself, why does poverty and some of these things exist? So that's basically, I am in arguing and debating with myself. I ask myself whether my job is helping to push those scales, push those things towards much, much better. Because I am persuaded the amount of knowledge that the humanity has captured is enough to solve our problems. It is enough to solve the most basic ones, not all, certainly, but the most basic problems that we face today. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And even the thing we talk about policies, all the policy documents we need are actually written and sitting on shelves somewhere. I'll move to Christopher Otieno. Rosie, you can help unmute. And after that, we'll come to John Kamau. So just be on standby. You can unmute on your end once Rosie enables you. Christopher, are you able to speak or do I ask on your behalf?
I'm able to speak.
Okay.
Okay, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you
okay,
are.
let's have a moment. Mr. Kwame, I would like to ask a question. As a Gen Z, how would you advise someone who has a business idea and has already identified the gap in our market to try and actualize the business idea into practical? And also the second questions come in, how do you consolidate enough resources to put the idea in place with a background that you haven't have enough experience in at a career level, but in business level, you have some bit of experience?
Okay, so let me start with this. I am an economist. Well, as economists, before you have a PhD, you call yourself a student until you get a PhD when you can supervise others. But I call myself a student of economics, not necessarily a business advisor. So business funding is a different landscape. But this is what I know. There are businesses, or let me say, there are specific firms that fund business ideas from young people. Some of them are based in the continent. I mean, some of them are based in Kenya, some are based outside. So that might be your one opportunity. The second opportunity is just to ask for somebody to partner with you. So you can, if your idea is good, you ask somebody to partner with you in exchange for some portion of the business. And one of the things I've learned is, you all know I really used to like, I don't like reality TV, but I like something called Shark Tank, where you have these people people talk about the ideas, and people who have money and understand business help them to manage the business and to scale it and stuff like that. And I suspect perhaps that's one of the things that you need. Because yes, we are in an unfortunate environment. Because the way banks run in Kenya, usually they require collateral. And a young person has two disadvantages. You're too young, so all you have is ideas, and you don't have property which you can place at risk. If you had it, you would. But if you don't, just because you don't have it, you're at a disadvantage. So the point is to look for a partner, guard your idea properly, but look for somebody you can discuss with you the possibility of funding it, scaling up. And in exchange for that, you can exchange a part of the ownership. I think that would be a win-win possibility for both of you. Yeah.
Thanks, Kwame. We'll move to John Kamau. You can unmute.
All right. Thank you, Felix. I want to ask. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, very well.
Awesome. I'd love to learn from Kwame's experience. Kwame, when you first stepped into the CEO role, what were the key things that you learned early on, especially the mindset shifts that you had to experience that have continued to shape how you have led to this day?
Okay. The first thing that I learned about the CEO's role is just the IE is a small micro business, but the number of checks we process in every second week, because we do them on a cycle basis. So what that means is I actually had to redo my diary, where I had to be clearer with my diary, where I had to set up, say, I usually do it on Thursday. Thursday afternoons I dedicate to managing payments and looking at the IEA's financial thing. Did you see that? I would manage as a senior program officer or a leader of programs. It was much easier because all I needed to do was to make sure that I have an hour to meet everyone in the week, just to see what progress they're making and stuff like that. And sometimes you don't even need to simply send you a paragraph of stuff and all that. So that's one of the things that I needed to learn. So that's the first. The second is I think of myself as very hands-on. And one of the things I needed to do is to make sure that I'm helping my colleagues do work and not undermining their confidence in their ability to do that work by getting too involved. I still have that problem because if you answer a question and you ask, have you guys looked at this data? And I haven't looked at it. So you find it for them and you're giving it to them and asking them. So that can be, but that's required. I think one of the things you needed to, as a CEO, especially in an office, because I am told that you're actually not just the manager side, you're also head of the thinking side. So it means that I have to straddle those two things. And the third one that I recognized was how important it is to have a financial, because every business has that financial side. So financial and administration person. Because if you come from research, your financial and administration skills, you might have the financial skills, you can read balance sheets and see things, but your financial administration skills on the other side depend on somebody else and your systems. And I couldn't tell whether our systems were perfect or not. So whoever it is who's managing that financial side, being able to alert you and to raise the red flags for you are quite essential. And the final one was I had to learn that auditors are your friends, even if the way the auditors would, the auditors, financial audits are required. It's good practice, but it's also very essential for a CEO. But the way the auditors present findings, you sometimes think they're blaming you. So if you don't personalize that thing by simply saying, look, they're trying to make this organization okay, then you can use most of your time debating with them and feeling a bit frustrated about the stuff. But often the things that they are raising are intended to raise organizational performance. So it's basically planning my time much, much better, trusting the financial person, not being overbearing to my colleagues, and obviously reading the audit reports and extracting from them the value that is essential for keeping an organization competitive.
Thanks a lot. We can move to Jaramil. You can unmute. I agree on internal audit. I remember when we got an internal audit function in CAM, that was the most amazing thing. Because as you're saying, they give you information which is very useful. Okay, Jaramil, please unmute. Jaramil, if you're still there. If not, I'll ask your question. He's asking, having served as a lead at IEA for over a decade, what do you consider the next chapter in your personal and professional journey? Are there new roles, sectors, or challenges you hope to explore?
Okay, so let me say one of the things that I do. You know, one of the things that CEOs in the modern world, I think, are placed under pressure for is to be able to read too far into the future. And I think that sometimes can be a problem, because the most important thing you can manage is today's agenda, the day-to-day, keeping the business as a going concern, evaluating your risks and all that. So the IEA tends to gives me usually a 5-year contract reviewed at the mid-course. And for me, my personal view, again, different from what people say, is I always complete my contracts. Unless I'm asked to leave, I take a contract at the beginning of it and I know I have 5 years to do the stuff that I need to do. So I keep my mind within that time frame. So I'm not looking outside. I'm not looking outside. And that usually helps you to keep a small worldview. And then you know that the only thing I need to, well, some of the only things I need to do is that. So I don't. When the time comes to review my contract, and if it is, then I can see what are the options. But in the meantime, it's just that. But as I tell you, the IEA itself also goes through phases. Like every organization goes. So every phase gives you an opportunity to sharpen something about yourself. So as I'll say, I know this is not necessarily, it's very uncool, but I usually I cross the bridge when I come to it. I don't cross the bridge 5 years beforehand by saying, look, yes. So I usually prefer to complete the contract, and then when you complete it, the agreement, and I tell my colleagues as well, you have longer term contracts. This job requires you to have a medium term contract. Only then do we see your value. Because in the first 1 year, to be honest, dealing with policy in Kenya, you're just finding your way, your feet. Yeah. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks for that. You live in the present. Lawi, please go ahead and ask, and then we'll have on Serio. They are linked, so you can ask them back to back. You
Can you hear me
unmute
now?
from your end. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Kwame, I've known you for many years. That goes without saying. So we were together with you in college. You were a great influence. You greatly influenced a lot of thoughts. But my question is this. I know you as an avid reader. I know you as an extremely avid reader. Which author or authors have influenced you most?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Lawi. I mean, this wasn't for my friends, but thanks for being here anyway. Let me say this. So one of the things that happened because of COVID, the COVID season got me back to reading fiction. I'd not read fiction for a very, very long time. But more recently, I discovered a guy. Again, my assessment is doctors, medics, are extremely good at writing prose. It's because they write it in very exact ways. So if you read literature written by doctors, forget about the prescriptions they give you. But if you read it about the way doctors describe things, they're very good at observing things, and they can actually describe it very, very well in language. So there's this guy called Abraham Verghese. He's a doctor. He lives in the States. He was born in India, though. His family worked in Ethiopia, so he has an African connection, an Indian connection, and he lives in the United States, and he's a doctor. And he's written a book which was the first one I read. So yes, I encountered this by a chance. I have sisters who like opera. So once in a while when they see her book club, they send something to me and ask me, please check this. So he has a book called The Covenant of Water, in which he writes a story that about 100 years, actually, 3 generations of a family from India all the way. It's a fantastic book. So I think I've added into my view of who a good author is. The other guy that I think is a very, very good author, to be honest, is he was not only a good polemicist and a public intellectual. There's a guy called Milton Friedman. He taught at Chicago. He won the Nobel Prize in economics, but he's a unique guy for 2 reasons. He's a different kind of economist in the sense that most economists take themselves too seriously and they think that they write only for a professional audience. Those articles that only PhDs can read. But Milton Friedman started to write for a lay audience to teach people economics in the 80s. And he's compiled a number of books that are fantastic to read. So those 2 come to my mind. So one for the professional audience side and the other one basically for the fiction side. And I think both are good. But yes, if anybody is interested here, I can do a book list for you. Or there's an app called Book Reads. It's available online, so you can join it as a subscriber, and then you follow other people and you share book recommendations with each other. So if you go in there, you'll find Kwame and you'll see some of the books that I've been reading over time. That might be useful for some of you, and it's quite a mixture of that stuff. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. On Sierra, I hope your question was answered. It was also about a book. I'll move to Mushai. Please help him to unmute his mic, Rosie. Mushai, you can unmute from your end once you're enabled. Then we'll go to Kate, so you can also line her up next.
Oh, hi. Yeah, hi, Kwame. And Phyllis, good to hear. I guess I'm joining the queue of friends. So I'll start by saying I had the privilege of working with both twins. And I think, Kwame, you're underrating yourself a little bit. Because I sat with your brother on a desk for many months at least, and we've done some work with you as well. And yes, you can box well at that weight also. Asante sana. But one of the things is I had is about especially when you look at the IEA and all the ideas we put out, and I'm trying to phrase the question well. I don't know how many of them are taken up in actual policy and so on. And then does it get tiring at some point? Yeah, it's like howling at the wind. It's like people they're not hearing us, or they're not getting this. And so how do you get over that?
Thanks, Mushai.
Thanks, Mushai, and thanks for the plug. Yes. Okay. So let me say this. One of the things, and Mushai, you also manage a company, so you know this. One of the things that being a leader teaches you by default is not to take your losses too seriously, in the sense that you don't get too despondent when something has gone wrong, either in your strategy or something, because otherwise, I mean, you discourage your team. I think one of the things that people learn by instinct is people in the IEA, my colleagues, they can read the mood about whether I'm fearful about something or a situation and stuff like that. So as a CEO, you get alerted, or a leader in any point. Even as a parent, you get alert to the fact that you don't broadcast fear. And at the same time, when you have victories, you pack them, you learn from them, but you don't over-dramatize your success, because many things lead to your success, including luck. So if you take those two things together, one of the things that it leads you to drive to is you understand that society is very complex. I mean, Kenya is a very complex world. And we are not the only ones with ideas about how it can be made better. So those ideas compete. But if government gives you the respect of listening to what you say, and then they tell you, Kwame, we disagree because the people who really run businesses want the tax at this level. That's okay. I think. So if we took it too personally, you're right. We'd all close down and then we go perhaps work in a bank or in a manufacturing firm and stuff like that. One of the things you know is development and prosperity, because the IEA's mission is to ensure a prosperous Kenya, prosperous and free Kenya. Prosperity is long-term. So we'll do our own bit and hack it well. But sometimes the respect that just government gives you, even if yesterday you were speaking on on TV or radio and you said something about the Ministry of Finance and they still call you and you do that, you understand that, yes, in many respects, many people are well-meaning even when they make errors. So yes, we win some, we lose some, but we get the strength to work every day by saying, look, our mission is large, and our mission did not tell us that you have to succeed in the year 2025 or you fold. So I think, so maybe that's a cop-out. I know you, it's like a cop-out, trying to accept our still being there. But that's just it. Yeah.
Well put. In CAM, we used to always say we live to fight another day after we've presented what we've been able to push through in the year. I'll move to Kate Gita's question. She's not able to come to the mic. So she says, Happy International Men's Day to Mr. Owino, and I extend the same to all the men in the room. Is there an end to generating new ideas? What's your advice to people in their 30s who have worked in an industry more than 10 years and have sensed the need to reinvent themselves? How should people handle career transitions?
Okay. Well, perhaps, you can take it. Maybe I am the right person, but maybe I'm not the right person because I think the only thing about the IEA is I've occupied every position possible at IEA, including intern. So that's quite some progress, but maybe that's again why, but I think career transition. So let me say one of the things that I think it's taken as a rule of life today, that if you stay in one place for more than 4 years, you've atrophied or calcified in the sense that you've and my view is that's very true. At the Institute of Economic Affairs, one of the things that I'm responsible for is to ensure that we have stable staff core, stable, medium term. So often if we have a staff member at a given level, medium or what, who leaves below 5 years or before we've completed a strategic plan, usually I need an explanation to the board, and the exit interviews tend to be about what happened and all that, because that helps us to be. So for us, we value stability. And maybe stability is a very conservative thing, but we do. So coming now to how you make a career transition, I think one of the things that is also clear in life today is that you can make a career transition from a couple of things out there. So people make them successful. That too is also true. Why? Because today you might be 40 and you're in a class with 20-year-olds and you won't feel necessarily out of place. You can learn a new skill and all that and go back in to do, or you can reinvent yourself so that even lawyers today are not all court going or working in corporations or running their own firms. So lawyers can do everything as well. Lawyers tend to be a very versatile profession. They even run American think tanks up here, and they do corporations and stuff like that. So I think the point is to make yourself versatile is a value for any profession. And if you find an opportunity for transition, that tends to be that tends to be. But I think if you're going to a new job, do a sense check, which is, do I have 80% of the skills that are required? And then you can transition by the other 20% being acquiring on the job or doing other things. Don't make a leap too far, because otherwise then you'll struggle a lot and you'll not like your job. Because one of the things I tell my colleagues at the Institute of Economic Affairs, it's also cliche, you will only succeed at this job if you're excited on a Monday morning when it's raining in July. You still want to come to the IEA on time. Otherwise, perhaps, yes, the weather and your body are giving you signals that maybe you should do something else.
To move on. Okay, that's good. Thank you for the compliment to lawyers. The next question is from Joe Amisi, who's a lawyer. Joe, if you can come to the mic. We were in campus together. Actually, we were in primary school. So he's known me since I was 5.
Hi, Phyllis. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I just have a very short and direct question to Kwame. Kwame, I believe some many years ago, without revealing your age, you are an active member of the Rotaract Club of Westlands, yourself and Seku. I know that because I was a member there at the same time. And I'd just like to find out from you, if that had any impact in your career progression, your career growth, or your grounding moving into the future that led you to where you are now. Thanks a lot, Phyllis, and good to see you again, both Phyllis and Kwame. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, certainly. So yes, I was a member of the Rotary Club of Westlands, my brother and I. So if you all know Rotary clubs, it's basically a service club. And one of the things that Rotary Club reinforces in individuals is basically your career or the job you do is your service. So you consider it not just basically a source of income or for your stature, but actually it's service. And it's Rotary clubs are organized around professional service and developing your service. I mean, developing yourself together with your fellows, but at the same time using it to influence society. So yes, it does. I mean, I give it credit quite a bit to that. I met very interesting professionals. So it did. What did it do? It affirmed something that I suspected when I was much younger, that professions actually matter, and doing it with dignity. I mean, you all know the test and all that is useful for progression in general, but just basically also being useful to society, so that work can be essential, but work can also be an end unto itself. Just working there's dignity in work, regardless of what it is.
Thank you. Thanks for that. 3 more questions, then we can start to wind up. But Philomena Mitalo asks, Kwame mentioned that the first item in his JD is ensuring IEA's financial solvency. How has he managed to do resource mobilization for all these years? Because resource mobilization is the biggest challenge most organizations face. What's his secret?
Well, there are no secrets. There are no secrets. So yes, I mentioned that my tasks are driven between the administrative side and so on the administrative side, fiscal solvency is one, and on the intellectual side, basically to thought leadership of the IEA, to make sure that the IEA is an influential player in Kenya's policy space. So those two, and I think they are connected. For as long as we maintain the IEA's viability and credibility as a credible source of alternative thought, we are able to do 2 things. One, to build a membership, and our membership pays a subscription. And that usually comes to about, it varies, but on the whole, usually about 4 to 5. Sometimes it gets so much as 8% of our total revenues per year. It is not nothing. 2, that membership tends to be people with, they give us advice. Remember, our membership actually pay to be members. So they give us advice about what opportunities are available. And sometimes they buy us influence by saying, look, I'm a professional in this area. I know person X, please speak to them and see whether you have ideas that you can. That's one. And the third one is just basically our staff. We have a staff who have footprint. And one of the things that they do is the staff job at the IEA is split into 4 areas. 1 is your policy research, 2 is your fundraising, 3 is your influence, basically communication influence, and the 4th is to manage your program, so some kind of administrative ability. So those teams by themselves, and they're diverse, have the ability to ensure that we have different funding opportunities, if you may call it that, because we have 6 programs. So that's also like in the way that a corporate leader would build 6 different products, and that allows you to have to manage shocks across by diversifying your portfolio, so to speak. So there's no magic per se. The IEA has a fundraising plan which the board approves, and which is available for anybody to, it's on our website. And if it's not, send me an email and I'll send a copy. So we don't try to do anything that's secret in that way. We think that our influence and our ability to raise funds comes from credible research, which gives us a credible voice. And that's useful. And of course, a strong membership.
Thank you. Jemima Mulinge, if you can come to the mic, and then Joseph Ayara, and then we'll close with Jaramil. He had another question. So if we could quickly unmute them, we do the 3, and then we can wind down. Yes, Jemima? Okay, if Jemima can't come, her question is, what advice would you give a career person who felt stagnant in their career journey at some point and decided to take a break, went back to school, studied something else, and is now following a different career path?
Well, I think that's success, right? If at one point either you feel burnout or a need to take time off to reflect or to redesign your career, and then you went back to school, acquired new skills, and are building up yourself again. I mean, that's success. So it's telling you that it is possible with proper reflection and good calculation. You can take a break, retool yourself, and still be valuable. So I think you should be giving advice to other people, not the reverse. Yeah. So that's
reinvention.
Yeah, that's reinvention. Successful, actually, reinvention.
Yeah, that's great. John, please come to the mic if you can. My power wants to die. There.
Thank you, Phyllis, for this opportunity, as well as Mr. Owino. Mine is just to go directly to the question, and maybe perhaps what are some of the fears that you've faced during your tenure as a CEO, and how have you been able to overcome them? Just to also learn from you, being that now we are new leaders who are emerging in the space from the different roles we are currently serving in. Thank you so much.
Okay. So let me start by telling you this. I am a Christian. I'm not saying a good one. I'm saying I'm a Christian who understands grace. And the Christian faith teaches you something that I interpret as showing that fear is an illusion. Because fear usually represents our discomfort with how time is running. So you think that, oh, if tomorrow comes, I might lose this or I lose that. So if you think about it, that fear is an illusion, then I'm not saying you will be fearless, but you'll actually come to understand that there's stuff you can control, there's stuff you cannot control, but you don't dominate yourself with that idea of being fearful. That's just my view. So that's one. The second is just have a sounding board. Could be a friend, a relative, somebody you can tell, look, I am concerned about, because fear tells you something about what you're anxious about. So I'm not saying you should be fear-free, but I'm saying that you need to have some tools or some rules about how you deal with what exactly is causing you that fear and the anxiety that's related to it. But I think that on the whole, fear is an illusion because the worst hasn't happened. You're just anticipating it, and therefore, perhaps it's informing your inaction in some cases, or you're informing your action in a way that might be an overreaction. So it's just that. So balance, I think, is an essential part for everybody's life. I think I draw that. Other religions or other persuasions might have also a view, but fear is usually not a good thing to create in other people, and to have it in yourself. Yeah.
Wow, that's a powerful way to end. Fear is an illusion, so we should live fearlessly. Easier said than done, but even when you feel fear, you move forward and keep going. Jaramel, I noticed your question was on raising financial resources, which I think Kwame answered. So we are done with all the questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions, for your participation, for your energy. Thanks, Sam. You've said it was very informative and encouraging. I agree. And Kwame, before I give you your parting shot, thank you so much for sharing your story. But over to you. Any parting shot as we come to the end of this session?
So let me use, again, as I said, I'm a Christian, but I'm not saying a good one. I'm just saying a Christian who understands grace. One of the things that I'm always reminded about was anybody who went to public universities in the 90s in Kenya. My mother wasn't a very fearful person. But every time before we went to universities, she'd call her priest to pray for us in general. And one of the stories that I remember, that a specific priest was like our family priest. Everything he used to tell us, the only debt you should owe is the debt of love. Again, that's Christian teaching, Paul so talking about it. So if you go back to even your work, and you remember that the only debt you should owe is a debt of love, you work with more purpose. You are kinder to yourself and others, and you are always willing to understand that you can improve. Loving people, it's a difficult thing, by the way. It's not easy, but it is the only debt you should owe. That's the only thing you can't do enough of in the world in which we live. So that's what I'd like to be a parting shot for this day. Thank you.
Thanks so much. That's a powerful parting shot. And Kwame, thank you for your time again and for the generosity of your story, the wisdom that you've shared, the courage you have shown through your career, through the things that you do. We all see you and we appreciate what you do. We look forward to hosting you again for our end of year dinner. It's on 6th of December. So all our panelists for the webinars will be in attendance. Grace will speak more to that. But I think for all of us, let's just leave knowing our ideas matter. Fear is an illusion. We don't need to be fearful. And at the end of the day, this conversation, I think, has really ignited a lot, even in me. And I hope it has done the same for all of you. So please share with us people you'd like to speak in future. And we look forward to seeing you at the dinner, which Grace will speak more about. So thanks a lot. I'll mute for now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kwame. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation once again to be part of our career dialogues, but this time the webinar. Thank you, Phyllis, as well for hosting the session, and I hope that it's been insightful for all of us. So I'm going to give us details. We are finishing the year with our Career Dialogues event, which we host every year that brings us together in a physical session. It's on the 6th of December at Gem Suits, which is in Riverside, from 5:30. So we're going to have all the mentors and mentees in one space. So from the Gen Zs to whatever the Gen Zs will consider as old, but these are the mentors. They will all be in attendance. One thing that we always like to have during the career dialogue session is the speed mentoring. So these questions that you ask here, you're able to ask them during the career dialogue session. So do not miss out. Our ticket goes for 3,500. Rose Hilda can put the details. However, I can give you the number to pay to, which is 0700 938 451. 0700-938-451. The tickets are limited. If you've been at the Career Dialogues dinner before, you know that it's a limited event. Therefore, the tickets should close very soon. We've already received people who booked their slots, so make sure you book your slot before we close the ticketing. You are also free to sponsor a young person within our network. You can sponsor one ticket for 3,500. You can also buy a table. I'll sponsor a table for 100,000. If you're interested in that, kindly reach out to myself or Rose Hilda on the chat. She's going to put an email where you can put in your inquiry, and you'll be able to sponsor either a ticket or a table, or even 5 tickets, but this would be great. You could also sponsor the event, or this can also be a good slot for you to be able to come and also speak about it, to promote your brand if you'd like to. Therefore, to sponsor the event, that goes for 150,000. You'll also have a speaking slot. Therefore, reach out to us as well to be able to arrange for that. There is usually very limited slots for that, so reach out to us for that as well. I'd also like to remind us that we'll be having, this is our last webinar session for the year, and we'll still be having the webinar sessions next year. So if you'd like to speak, or if you'd like to suggest speakers for next year, kindly drop them on the chat, or also email us on the email that Rose Hilda has provided. Therefore, from today, we hope to now see you all at Gem Suits on 6th of December. Do not miss out, and also endeavor to sponsor a young person. Thank you all for joining, and have a lovely evening. Thank you. Bye, everyone.